Good evening. Welcome to the East Bridgewater Dual Finance and Capital Meeting of September 30th. This is in preparation for the warrant for the special town meeting.
They didn't reach out to anybody. They thought you were, you guys were reaching out.
Okay.
She's gonna double check her email, but that she's pretty sure she didn't.
Okay. Okay, here's the capital project. So tonight, we are short on the finance committee. You know, we're trying to recruit 2 members. We have a few candidates. I guess I'll reach out to them. And so the finance committee will have to have a follow-up meeting. We'll have to, when we adjourn, we'll have to meet before the annual town meeting, a half an hour before the annual, and review the articles. There is one article that will require a capital approval. I've just handed out the capital project request form, and that relates to Article 13 in the special town meeting. There's a request for fencing to be installed to prevent baseballs from landing on adjacent properties and possibly causing property damage. This is down at Strong's Field. Okay. Okay. We do have a proposal. Is this more of an estimate than a real proposal?
What's a quote from that firm?
Okay. Okay, well, my concern is a quote. This is a quote utilizing most of the existing materials to save on cost. So the eventual funding for the project could result in more funding needed once the project started. But I have a couple of questions. The field's been there for 70 years. I guess I'm wondering how much injuries have been occurred because of this. I know maybe we might have had a broken window here and there that might cost us $400 to repair, not $42,000. So from my perspective, looking at this from a risk assessment from high to low, I'm very concerned that we're looking to use $42,000 of free cash before we go into what we know is going to be a critical budgeting year. So, for example, I believe the allocation to Plymouth County went up, what, $339,000 or $329,000 this year from last year? That could be a $297,000 problem. We don't know financially what is really available for extra things than keeping the lights on right now. I myself personally, and not to sway anybody's decision here, taking a look at it from the finance committee perspective and looking at it from a capital committee perspective, I'm not in favor, myself personally, of expending these funds this early before the budgeting season even gets through. Because my understanding from review is that initially, looking at everything status quo with some of the cost increases with medical insurance and the Plymouth County, we're still like $400,000, we're $400,000 in the hole. And it doesn't even give us that doesn't even take into consideration salary increases that are contractually that we're obligated to. So I myself would be reluctant to, at this time, pursue that from both my position on the Finance Committee and the Capital Committee, because that 42,000 could possibly be very much more needed in other areas. We just don't have the full picture. I'm not saying we couldn't revisit it in the spring, when we have a much better picture, if we've got money around and stuff, but I just,
I would say this, I think that maybe, in my mind, there's a distinction to be drawn between capital and finance on
Yep.
this. From a capital perspective, I think it's a worthwhile project. As someone who umpired on that field for a bunch of years, I can tell you that, moving that backstop and installing netting would be huge, and that field does get a lot of use.
but they can't move the backstop.
Yes, that's what the proposal says, they will, yeah. So that's, if you look at the email, there was apparently some, am I not right, Charlie, that, yes?
Move forward.
Yeah, so, I mean, the statement that's in there is, I mean, very accurate. The fact that if you have a passed ball now, you're basically giving two bases. I mean, it is so far back. So, again, from a utilization standpoint, I think the field gets a lot of use. I think that from a capital perspective, it's a worthwhile repair or, upgrade. From a finance perspective, I would probably, look more toward what you're saying.
But from a capital perspective, would it be, as we're challenged this year with things, and we've gotta look at capital at some point, and that capital will be, I think we're gonna have some critical needs that we're gonna have to address, because, should we look at this with the rest of the capital pool in need?
Charlie, I mean, is there some reason why he's got this in now? That we're-
Because we had finally worked out, and we had other proposals that were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And John Shea and John Haynes were able to not think outside the box, and basically say, okay, we're not gonna do this for hundreds of thousands of dollars. If the point is, let's find a different solution to prevent the balls from going over it, which basically means, instead of doing a high net, what you do is a cage, in essence, that prevents the balls from even going up. And therefore, at least, they go up, if they go straight, they don't go, if they go up on the sides, they won't go. The fencing now will prevent that from happening. And given the difference in price, and given how long we've been hearing from certainly one resident there, though what I'm told by John Shea
Well,
and
that
John Haynes
was
is
actually,
that we have other residents who don't complain, but
there is.
balls go in their yards also.
Yep.
That it would, we could do it next spring certainly, but they said, we've got a quote, let's bring it to the board, let's bring it to the finance committee. Obviously, for the most part, the seasons, I don't think there's anything going on there now, next spring.
What was the possibility of you using opera funds for stuff like this?
The board was reluctant to do so because they saw it as money that was being spent to the benefit of very few people.
What I think's interesting though is what you said about the actual play of the game. I didn't realize that there was an effect on playing the game, which I think is similar, helps a lot of more people if you talk
Yeah,
about
I mean,
players.
you're
Like,
basically, number
making
one,
an
you're
upgrade
helping
to
the
one of the
neighbors,
sports fields,
because
yeah.
neighbors are not getting, barraged by foul balls.
Yeah.
And there are, I don't know, 3 or 4 houses down there, I think,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. And as Charlie says, there was one neighbor who was down there who was very vocal about the fact that didn't want balls on his property being retrieved and so forth and so on. So, that's one part of it. The other part of it is it makes for a better game, and certainly it saves on the baseball budgets for whatever the programs are that are involved, so.
It's a lot of balls.
Yeah, it really, I'll tell you what, there
Well,
were a
$2,000
lot of foul
a
balls
lot
and a
of balls.
lot of.
But, and to your point, they don't want to use the ARPA funds maybe because it benefits very few. right now, I think from a funding perspective, we need to use our funds in a judicious way to benefit as many as possible, because we're in the same situation if we take it from free cash right now. It benefits very few. So, and that's my feeling on it. I mean, it's,
I think the other reason that it was, the proposal was brought is, obviously, we've been dealing with that resident for a while. I think the town officials who are involved in this said, look, at least we found a solution. Maybe it doesn't pass muster, but at least we can tell this person, we did put something
Voted on
before
it.
them, and, that we didn't ignore them, let's put it that way.
right, okay.
So from a capital perspective, I'll make a motion that we vote to recommend the approval of the expenditure of $42,000 for the Strong Field project as proposed.
All in favor?
We get a second, I don't know if there's a
Oh,
second.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, so that concludes our capital meeting for today.
If any of you want to ask any questions about the rest of the warrant, you have copies of it, I
We
believe?
have copies of it,
I'm happy to, I'm up here.
Yes, thank
got nothing else to do.
Well, yeah, I got plenty more to do downstairs,
You wanna
but
go down?
you made the effort to come in here, so I figure you should get at least,
Is that what we was talking?
Yeah. I do have one question. There are some in here without sums of money. Is that because we don't know it yet, like Article 1?
So Article 1, yeah, it was that, like, some things were still in negotiations. So the motion will read, I can give you the dollar amounts, what we think at this point, what the motion would read is $13,200 for library salaries, $8,000 for IT director salary, $10,000 select board salary. Downstairs, the select board, the assistant town administrator, not select board itself,
They're
but
not
that's
getting
what
it.
they're, that's what it's called on the books. And then $6,000 health insurance, and that's as a result of the library contract as well.
So it's total is about 38 grand right now.
And
we do have sufficient money in raising appropriate to cover this.
Okay. I think that was the only one left without a funding source.
yeah. And that's usually how we do the union ones, it's usually like that.
Okay, Article 12. A sum of money?
Oh, the medical expenses, we decided on 50,000.
So this is for Paul O'Brien. To give you the backstory. The town, a number of years ago, accepted a statute that said that if someone retires on medical, that this is not workers' comp, this is for police and fire. They retire on medical due to a work-related injury, we still have to pay the medical bills related to that injury even after they retire. Back when Paul suffered his injury back, what was it, 99, 97, something like that.
A few years.
He still needs surgery because of that decades later. And the town back then was self-insured. Our current insurer isn't gonna cover something from that far back, so we're on the hook for this. This includes the cost for the surgery. We also built in money, because we know there's gonna be physical therapy after the surgery and such. So, one way or the other, we're on the hook for it. We need to appropriate the money for it.
Okay.
We've always had money in an article for this, and this is the only injury I've ever seen us pay out on, but it's dwindled since, I think we actually took the money out one year, because Charlie and I weren't aware of this, like right when we first started, so we've put money in since then, but maybe only $5,000, and now
'Cause it may-
surgery's actually,
In some cases, we may have deductibles and such when we were dealing with people who were active in the departments, but we had medical bills that weren't covered by our police and fire accident policies. That was what mainly the line item was for. In this case, it's a much larger bill dealing with a retiree.
Okay. All right, those are the only questions I had. I'm familiar with these articles. If you guys have any questions or you want to review them and go over them.
Yeah, I have two questions about the rescinded amounts.
So, we-
So,
The rescinded amounts.
Yeah.
Article 2 is debt being rescinded, so the 295,000 was actually for the town hall and police generator, and the project came in like well under what we originally authorized to borrow. So we need to, the money was never borrowed, but to basically unauthorize it, we have to rescind it. And the 1.4 million was from the central school roof project. When you do an MSBA project, you have to authorize the full amount of the project, even though in this case, I think it was 57% came from MSBA reimbursement. So this is the money that we authorized that we didn't spend towards the project. And then 3 and 4 are really just technical things. When I submitted the balance sheet to the state, they said that the way, those pieces of the vote at the town meeting for funding weren't technically legal because they didn't have that amount of retained earnings. In EBCAM's case, it's because it was their first year, their retained earnings hadn't been certified, so even though the money was there, it wasn't certified, so to the state, it doesn't count.
until
And the
it's
same,
certified, which it is,
until it's
it's done and done.
certified, right, and now it's been done. And water, the same thing, they have 500,000 set aside every year for reserve for expenditures, but because it's reserved for expenditures, it wasn't certified as retained earnings. So we're rescinding it. We've now been certified as of August 30th or something, and then in Article 4, we can revote it. It's not changing anything. I really hope that people just let it pass and I don't have to try to explain that.
Basically, the money was there but not certified.
Right, the
and
money
now-
was there,
and
not
so
certified.
when we voted on that date, it didn't exist officially. Now it exists officially, and we can have the vote by Article 4.
It was there the whole time, I promise you that. It's just, now it's,
Yeah, you might want to explain that. You will get questions, I think.
yeah, it's a weird one, but it's not changing anything when everything's said and done.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. We can review these more, and we don't have to go into the zoning articles.
No, you can talk to Kevin about this.
We did.
Boy,
Already had that discussion before you got here.
so,
You know, the ADU thing is a totally separate thing from
yeah, it'll be interesting. So I will, Finance Committee will reconvene a half an hour before the town meeting to vote on these.
Is that 6:30?
Sometimes
So, yeah, we start at 7, so 6:30.
6:30, yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you've already asked Rebecca to post for you.
We haven't. We did-
Okay, I'll go
thought we
down
were
and
gonna
ask her to
have
post.
And then, I'll reach out in the meantime to the two candidates.
And Rebecca actually just messaged me and said, Lee sent the applicant information to the committee, and then you can contact, so now you should have the information to contact.
Okay. And if I can get a hold of them in the next day or two, maybe we can get together at, 6:15 and have a chat with these folks and interview them before we vote on the articles. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay with you?
So post for 6:15?
Well, we're gonna meet at 6:30.
Well, if you're doing business,
What?
Post for
if you're
6.
doing business, yeah, I need you to post for 6:15.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they can, then we'll change it to 6:15?
We'll post it for
Just post it for
6:15, and then
6:15.
if no one's coming, just
You'll
tell
sit
each
around,
other
yeah.
just to come at 6:30.
Can you make it, George?
October 7th?
Yeah.
Gonna be a good time.
For values of good times.
Then we should have 2 more votes at town meeting. They're there, right? Sounds good. Maybe we'll have a quorum there. All right, with that, I'll entertain motions to adjourn. Finance? Capital too?
Capital, well, I'll do both if I, you know.
All right, all those in favor? Well, second, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.